I'm Alex Rondinan, and welcome to If History is Any Guide, the political and current affairs program on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. The history of the war on drugs should have made it crystal clear to everyone that the US government is only ever interested in pursuing the policies that serve its interests and those of its masters in corporate capital power, and it merely gives us lip service to the concerns and interests of ordinary people, which are nothing more than crocodile tears. Those on the left shouldn't be dumb enough to think that just because the government says that it is doing these things for our benefit, that they in fact are doing so, for that would be naivete in the extreme. When the war on drugs was declared, it was officially sold as to being to the public benefit, for we had been suffering due to there being vast amounts of drugs on the streets, and only by the police cracking down on it could our society once again be safe. In other words, there was a danger that existed, the police would help save us, and afterwards everything would be peaceful and good. But as we now know clearly, just because the government officially says something doesn't make it true, for the war on drugs had nothing to do with public interest or benefit, and had everything to do with launching a racist backlash on African Americans. The new laws that were passed gave the police new powers to enforce a strict, brutal and humiliating regime upon blacks, which has contributed to creating the new Jim Crow that we see today. The war on drugs did nothing to fight back against the international drug cartels, the drug baron, and the gigantic pharmaceutical black market, and had everything to do with controlling the US domestic population via police repression. In short, when you strengthen the power of the police and the state to enforce laws, they will be used against you while rhetorically being all to your benefit. Your rights and freedoms will be infringed upon, and the country will move closer and closer to being an authoritarian dictatorship, while the language being used will be of progressive liberalism that says that everything is wonderful and friendly and good right now. And do I have to mention the war on terror? According to the official words that came from US administration official, this campaign was meant to crack down on terrorists, to protect our lives, to make sure that America remains a safe place for democracy and freedom to exist, and to retard all efforts by Islamists to take over the country. The war on terror had nothing to do with protecting our lives or making America a safer place to live, and had everything to do with launching a campaign of harassment, bullying and humiliation against Arabs and Muslims across the United States. Thankfully, most of the left wasn't stupid enough to believe such claims, and yet they have never been willing to fully stand up and defend Muslims' rights when they suffer the repression from the state and the police, which is a tragic shame. So let's talk about the issue of gun control in the US, and let's compare it to the two previous campaigns mentioned. Let's say, hypothetically, that new gun control laws are introduced, and they include measures that allow police to crack down on gun ownership and use, such as new stop and frisk laws if they suspect that someone is carrying a concealed weapon, or the ability to perform raids on people's houses if they suspect that someone is stashing illegal weapons. And how about background check purchasing laws that prevent American citizens with criminal records from purchasing guns? Let's ignore the hot air nonsense and the internal politicking of the Washington suits, and let's think about the implications of such legislation being passed. If all those laws happen, it will give the police free rein to launch brand new racist assaults on blacks and Latinos and Arabs and Muslims, creating yet more liberal legal space for them to get away with their rotten and unacceptable behaviour. We should always be looking for new ways of holding the police accountable and responsible for their behaviour, not doing the opposite, which is about blurring the legal boundaries when more so that accountability effectively disappears altogether. Why should we, i.e. the left, give away the game by allowing our enemy to become strengthened, for us to loosen the chains we hold against them, while at the same time giving them left cover by supporting them when they're doing this? The tragedy and stupidity of liberals in providing such a progressive coating to the most right-wing and conservative and repressive of campaigns, which would be gun control, is bad enough. But with the issue of guns, the potential of it getting out of hand is something that needs to be seriously considered. Just like with the wars on drugs and on terror, a war on guns would not involve going after the genuine criminals in the industry, targeting those who deserve being targeted, such as the professional bank robbers, the syndicates, the gangs, etc. Those who truly deserve to be cracked down will be ignored by the police because of the deep corruption inside of the American ruling class. And besides, those people have far too many guns, and so to take them down through repression would be a very long, bloody battle between the police. Black market business is tied to legal businesses, which is tied to the US state, which is tied to the police force. Hence, the US police have never gone after the black market business industries, such as the multinational weapons and drug smuggling operations, but instead only go after the small-scale local dealers, the small fries, because they aren't powerful enough to give them orders and they aren't strong enough to defend themselves. Any way you look at it, the police aren't going to go after the people who genuinely deserve to have their weapons taken off them, such as, I might say, the US Army, or private armies, or the mercenaries, and the far-right militias. Innocent people, mostly those from ethnic minorities, will be targeted in an openly racist campaign against their gun use and ownership, whereby police harassment and humiliation will rise to yet new levels. That is exactly what happened in the previous wars on drugs and on terror, and that is exactly what would happen if there was a war on guns, which would be launched if such gun control legislation was passed. The people that the US government fears the most is the country's domestic population, for it's ordinary Americans who hold the power of shutting down or overthrowing the government in some popular general strike or uprising or revolution, which is why crushing them endlessly is the only means of survival. It is ridiculously naive for anyone on the left to take Obama at his own word, for the man does not deserve to be trusted, as his record in office plainly shows. Instead of giving him left cover like what is happening right now, we should resist any and all opportunities he has to launch these kinds of racist campaigns. And we should not be giving the police the excuse they need to have more powers to infringe upon our rights and liberties and to repress further onto blacks, Latinos, Arabs and Muslims, to interfere with their and our lives, and for them to arrest us all at their own will. And that's all the time we have for today. You've been listening to If History Is Any Guide, the political and current affairs program on Bizz 99.9 FM Substitute Radio. I'm Rondinan. Until next time, goodbye.